we start seeing from about 2010, 2011 is a growing excitement around the ideas of using public procurement to do two things: to displace existing established white companies, and two, to encourage the formation of new black-owned and black-controlled industrial enterprises. So there's a sense that one can transform the economy in a positive and progressive way by leveraging the procurement budgets of state-owned enterprises. And I think these are worthwhile and worthy ideas, and there's lots of legitimate excitement around these ideas. I think these remain very, very compelling ideas. From about 2011, 2012, an analysis begins to emerge that this model of economic transformation cannot be achieved within the framework of the law and within the framework of the Constitution. In other words, the analysis begins to emerge that the Constitution itself is an obstacle to radical economic transformation. And we see this in a whole range of documents beginning to emerge from that period. What it means is that it begins to set the project of radical economic transformation up against the Constitution, and in particular constitutional bodies, and the National Treasury becomes clearly in the sights of the protagonists of radical economic transformation. So what we start seeing from 2011, 2012 are growing attacks, verbal attacks, and political attacks on the National Treasury and on the figure of the Minister of Finance, Pravin Gordhan, and then of course Pravin Gordhan again. As we argue, the project moves towards a growing illegality, so the project starts setting itself up against state institutions. Fundamental institutions, which are integral to our democracy and to the performance of the state, are being weakened. SARS, the Hawks, the MPA, of course, and then of course the National Treasury. What we're seeing in this period, and this is what we argue, is the emergence of what we call a shadow state. What this means essentially is that key decision-making, key political decision-making is increasingly starting to happen not in formal constitutional bodies, not in government, not even in cabinet, but increasingly in informal networks and what we call kitchen cabinets, loose associations of people coming together to make key decisions, of which Saxonwold in Johannesburg is just one of them. The key argument, though, is essentially what is happening is that key decision-making is moving out of formal institutions, and especially it's moving away from the ANC itself and outside the tripartite alliance. Essentially, what the argument we're making is, during this process, we are seeing three things coming together: an assault on the state, the weakening of state institutions, and we know the importance that the state needs to play in South Africa's development trajectory, the weakening of South Africa's constitution and democracy, the weakening of the tripartite alliance, are coming together. And ultimately, of course, this project is not developmental because we're seeing huge amounts of money leaving the country. We estimate now that around 40 billion rand has left the country in the last 5 years, just through this particular network of people. So let me come to the end here. I think we have to understand that this is not just a criminal group that has seized power, that there is a political conviction which underpins it. The conviction is this: that the Constitution and South Africa's democracy are obstacles to real radical economic transformation, and hence the move to illegality and even criminality is both necessary and legitimate. And what it means is that if we're going to produce a real project of radical economic transformation in South Africa, which I think is there's widespread agreement, especially here, that this is absolutely necessary, what is required is to reaffirm a commitment both to state building, to South Africa's constitution and to democracy, and a project of radical economic transformation which has wide and inclusive benefit.